Today I've come to see a narrow townhouse that's squeezed in between a pub and a betting shop, just behind the railway tracks at Waterloo Station. If that sounds like an inauspicious starting point, then wait till you see inside. The house feels more like a loft apartment, with generous spaces that are cleverly connected together. Hi Michael, how are you?
Hi Matt.
Good
Very
to
well.
see you.
Please come in.
Thank you. It belongs to the designer Michael Anastassiades. Drawing on his Cypriot heritage, he's created a home that celebrates the uplifting power of light. During the day, sunshine reflects off the passing trains and dances across the walls. And in the evening, Michael's own lighting designs gently illuminate the space to create an atmosphere of total calm. I'm Matt Gibberd, co-founder of The Modern House. Welcome to Homing In.
This was a floor that I laid down myself, or at least started it, and then realized what a bad job I had done and had it finished by somebody else.
Oh, did you? Where did you get it from? The wood?
It came from County Hall,
Right.
from the building on the South Bank.
Okay.
When they were doing the refurbishment of the whole building at that time. It was 98, and so I had some builders that came and sold it to me. They knocked at my door and I said, looks lovely, but then didn't realize the state that it arrived. It was completely covered in staples and tar, so I had to do a lot of kind of work on it and decided to lay it in a very special pattern, which you see here. This house has been pure improvisation. The original plan of the kitchen was that it was going to be all white and with a marble white floor.
Yeah.
And I worked very closely with a very good friend of mine who's an architect who has been the main visionary for the whole house, and we worked together on it. And then when we put it up and it looked, so amazing with the floor, I said to him, let's not paint it. Okay. Why paint it? I mean, it just perfectly matches all the wood color. And so we decided on this wood that it was going to be the wood of the house. Okay. So everything ended up being, this type of mahogany, either sapili or miranti. I mean, as you can see, even the columns where sanded are actually exactly the same type of wood. I lived in a house which was pretty much a building site for about 3 years. Without a kitchen, without anything, just running water and heating, and that's all I needed, and a bed. I never felt it's finished, and I don't think it has even today.
So why isn't it finished? What have you got to do?
No, you constantly discover things, and you say, oh, I want to change this, I want to change that. I think, I started the basic work on this house, and then 6 years later, I decided kind of to build another room as an extension on top of my old studio, which is this conservatory that we have there. And then later on, like 10 years ago, I decided to build another floor above my bedroom where I would have, let's say, the most incredible view looking over Waterloo Station and the railway tracks. Back then, I remember sort of loving this open plan loft buildings. So I had this translated on a vertical scale. So the idea of connecting these volumes through openings. And especially back then, the house did not have a single door other than just the front door. And it wasn't a matter of cost, which everybody thought, okay, you didn't put doors because they cost too much money, but it was out of choice.
There's obviously a huge railway line beyond here. Is this partly to screen that and to feel like you're in your own world?
Very much so, because it feels very invasive in one respect. I mean, for as much as I love this sort of urban setting, I think you need to filter it. Yeah. And my idea of the trees and the greenery was to just screen yourself from the outside a little bit. And I think it softens everything.
So what's really obvious, I think, about this space is you're getting natural light in and stealing it and lending it to other spaces wherever you can. So we're in the bathroom here, and then what's happening here? This goes down into the...
It's more about connecting spaces, because the house is pretty much an open plan house, but on a vertical kind of scale. So you have these contacts, but of course, you know, being a bathroom, you can kind of close it with this sort of sliding window here. But this whole idea was to connect the volumes pretty much. And even in the top floor, which we will go, you will see some interesting trick there, just to keep that contact, because it's probably the one most isolated room of the house.
Yeah.
But yet there is the connection there.
Yeah. But the good thing is you can lie in bath and you can order a cup of tea from downstairs. Is that the idea?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody to deliver it to you, that's for sure you can. Somehow I had to kind of isolate, let's say, the top floor from this part, which was the bedroom. Okay. And hence I came up with this idea of this folding door that that makes this volume also quite abstract, you know, in the sense of hides the staircase, but creates a different sort of level of calm, I guess, to the room. This is the place where I was referring to.
So what's that doing?
That's actually connecting the top floor with the rest of the house.
And connecting it in terms of what? What do you think?
In terms of sound, in terms of light, in terms of, I guess, sound. If somebody's sitting upstairs, you can pretty much look down and spy of what's happening, even all the way down to the basement, which is quite nice. And I think this particular thing also exists in some of the oldest houses of Gaudi in Barcelona. So you can see all the way down into the basement, so you feel connected to the rest of the house. It's a place where you come and rest or read a book. So somehow you decide to disconnect yourself with everything else, but at the same time it's about being sensitive over what's happening in the floors below you, and I think this discreetly allows that.
I must say, personally, I much prefer a fixed window with a panel alongside, because I just think it frames the view much more successfully. But also in this case, you've got this, as you say, this really deep sill here, so you can actually sit on it.
You can sit, you can read, you can lie, you can put a cushion, or you can do anything. But the idea that it allows the surface to be there, so you're very much sitting outside, but actually you're protected and you're screened off from the world.
How do you find the noise of the trains? Does it bother you? Do you find it meditative? Do you zone out? How do you find it?
Everything affects us from the moment we allow it to affect us. So even noise, you know, the idea that you have this kind of noise of these braking trains coming into the house, but from the moment you change that and you try to see it in a positive way, then it stops bothering you. Yeah, it's interesting. This happened all of a sudden, sort of one evening when I had a friend of mine who's a singer that was here, and she turned around and she said to me that I love the sound of the singing trains. And so everything sort of changed, the perception of this being a nuisance rather than actually turning it into something kind of positive, almost like a sort of abstract, composition.
It's really lovely. I love it. What a nice idea.
My house, for sure, became a laboratory. I needed everyday things. I needed furniture to sit and eat. I needed furniture to work. I needed lamps to illuminate spaces, and therefore a lot of my designs actually started from this laboratory. So it was a space to design for, it was a space to also try things out and test them and live with the objects that I was actually creating. I realized that I needed a light for this void that you see here. And of course I looked at the first sort of choices, looked at the big brands, iconic pieces that admired, and then realized that none of them really worked well in the space, apart from the fact that I couldn't afford them at the time.
Yeah.
So I decided that maybe it's time to kind of design one myself, and actually pretty much love this particular bulb, the old Linestra bulb, and bought these tubes, which I simply configured in a mock-up, in a wooden mock-up, and held it from the balcony up there, and actually worked. And I said, well, this is what I need to design.
I still love it. I still absolutely, it's just a brilliant piece of design, I have to say.
It's quite fascinating to kind of distill something to that level.
Yeah.
And I guess highlight what is the most important part, which is really the illumination. So everything else is this sort of almost like a candelabra holding a candle. As you can see in this case, it's just the bulb. I remember when I first came to London, we used to have so much fog and regular,
That's a good point.
on a regular basis. I think it no longer exists, that sort of mysterious atmosphere, which was quite intriguing and very magic, I think, as an experience. You used to find these postcards in souvenir shops, and sort of, there was a grey card. Below it, it was written foggy London, and that was it. Growing up in Cyprus, you take light for granted. This is the norm. You know, you almost have too much of it. You know, so intense that, you know, it's unbearable. You have to kind of shield yourself from it. And obviously that these extremes, you know, in this sort of two different settings helped me build that appreciation for both worlds, I would say. You know, I think you need to be deprived of something in order to actually give it value. Now, this is a painting by Enrico David, Italian-British artist. I've been a big fan of his work. I always dreamt of having a big piece by him, and he always creates this gigantic sort of paintings, and I flirted with a lot of them before that, but none of them fitted my house. Okay. And then eventually found this one, which I was literally going around with a tape measure trying to kind of fit it, but for some reason it perfectly fits.
It does, yeah, you've done well.
I really love having it.
As you say, it's enormous, but it doesn't dominate the room.
For sure. I mean, I guess it's always a sort of the right level of calm that you need to introduce in a space, especially in very sort of confined spaces, when things, especially large pieces, tend to be quite overwhelming. I mean, I have quite a lot of sort of smaller works as a big contrast, I guess, to the big pieces. But somehow this contrast of the very, very small, intense works very well with something a bit calmer.
A client of ours who's got a modernist house in Scotland, she once said, when the sun comes out, everything starts to dance, which I think is such a lovely quote. But that's sort of how it feels in here. I mean, even behind you there are things happening. The light is causing all sorts of interesting shadows all the time.
Because things move. I mean, the trains move. I think you can hear them in the background even, and especially at this time of the day when there's more activity, people going home, and therefore there's more frequent trains. And so that sense of movement, even if you can't hear it, it's interesting that you can actually experience it through the light, through these reflections. It does affect your environment. So subconsciously, you know that this is what's happening. You don't even have to look at the time.
So tell me about this piece here.
This is one of my pieces. I call them mirrors, but they're pretty much reflective surfaces of light. And the idea of using copper as a material was just to make the light warmer and a warmer tone to the room. The stones, those ones are lingam. I started collecting. They are natural completely. Yeah. These are different. These stools are, I designed these stools. They are meditation stools.
Okay. Can you get down that far? My hamstrings won't let me down there, Michael.
Yes, you can. I mean, you know, I can try and demonstrate, but...
There it is, look, the yoga background coming in. So is that comfortable?
Yeah, very comfortable. I tempt you to try it.
There's no way I'm getting down there.
I love low-lit spaces at night. You know, there's a reason why we have to kind of wind down in the evening. We don't need so much light like we have during the day.
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more. I say in my book, the biggest scourge of modern interiors, I think, is those runways of spotlights that you get on the ceilings, especially in kitchens. There's just no need to light everything up from above, and there's no need for it to be so bright. I mean, what's striking about your kitchen is you've got one wall light, and then you've got the lights in the base of those units there, and that's it.
I always felt that as a designer of light, you have to really embrace darkness. It's important because you mentioned shadows. I mean, you can't have light without having shadows, and I think these two are very strongly sort of connected. So, you know, a light fixture has to function as a sculptural object because most of its time and most of its life it spends it turned off. So 70-80% of the time the light is there, but you know there is no light. And then 30% of the time then you turn it on, and then something magic happens. The source of light, the illumination that you get, it's the space that it actually occupies suddenly becomes very different.
Do you have all your lights on dimmers?
I do, because then this allows me, although usually I always leave them on the lowest setting. You enter a darker space, your eyes adjust to that light. I'm not asking anybody to read a book in the dark, but certainly to cook, I think is perfectly functional.
I love that, yeah. Sounds dangerous, but I like it. Cheers.
Cheers.
What's cheers in Greek?
Yamas.
Yamas.